A few kilometers from Porto, next to the Leça River, stands a monastery with almost 1,000 years of history. It was a place of hospitality, worship and defense, a stopping point for pilgrims on their way to Santiago de Compostela. Today, it remains one of the most remarkable examples of Gothic architecture in Portugal. Discover the secrets and history of the Monastery of Leça do Balio. Come and discover Portugal with us. Please like, subscribe and leave your comment. Your support and opinions are very important to us. Thank you. The Monastery of Leça do Balio is located in Recreio, next to the river Leça and a short distance from the old Roman road that crossed this river and linked Porto to Braga. In the 10th century there was already a small monastery here dedicated to the Lord Saviour, modest in size and foundation, possibly intended to accommodate members of its patron family. Its patrons were Trutesendo Ossuredos and his wife Unisco Mendes, members of an important family of the old local nobility. A document from the year 1003 refers to a donation they made to the friars of the basilica founded here. In 1021, Unisco Mendes and his son Ossuredo donated this monastery to Tudelido, abbot of the Mozarabic monastery of Vacaria, near Coimbra, marking a period of growth and increased prestige for Leça. At the beginning of the 12th century, Teresa, Countess of Portugal, donated this monastery to the military religious order of Malta, better known as the Knights Hospitaller, who established their first mother house in Portugal here. In 1140, Afonso Henriques expanded the donation, granting the monastery, through a charter of sanctuary, jurisdiction over a larger territory. A new monastery in Romanesque style was then built. The temple we see today is the result of Gothic-style renovations and extensions carried out in the first quarter of the 14th century by order of the Hospitaller bailiff Friar Estêvão Vasques Pimentel. On the main facade, the portal is a pointed arch with 4 archivolts, decorated with geometric and plant motifs, supported by columns with capitals also ornamented with plant motifs. Above the portal, there is a cornice resting on corbels that supports a crenellated parapet. Farther up, we can see the large rose window that illuminates the interior of the church. The archivolts are a set of concentric arches that frame the upper part of a portal. Each archivolt recedes in depth and can be decorated with carved elements. In architecture, a corbel is a carved stone that supports a cornice or parapet. It can be decorated with human figures, animals, or plant motifs. A corbel table is a row of corbels under a cornice. It is very common in Romanesque and Gothic architecture and has a structural and decorative function. Finally, the parapet is a strip of low wall at the top of a facade or roof. It can conceal the roof and sometimes be crenellated with merlons, as is the case in Leça do Balio. The volumes of the nave, chancel and transept are staggered. The side naves have single-pitched roofs and the higher central nave has a gabled roof, as does the transept. The 28-meter-high bell tower has machicolations at the corners and halfway up the west, south and east sides, with several arrow slits on all four sides, clearly marking its defensive function. Machicolations are protruding balconies with openings in the floor, used to defend towers and walls, allowing projectiles to be thrown at the enemy. Defenders resorted to solutions such as throwing stones, using arrows, or liquids such as hot water, tar, or boiling oil. The arrow slits were narrow vertical openings in the walls or towers, used to shoot arrows while maintaining the necessary protection for the archer. On the south side facade there is an ogival portal with 4 archivolts, the interior of which is decorated with plant motifs. The columns have capitals decorated with zoomorphic and phytomorphic motifs. It is set in a simple gable topped by the cross of the Sovereign Military Hospitaller Order of St. John of Jerusalem, of Rhodes and of Malta, the full name of the Knights Hospitaller. The gable is a decorative triangular element carved above Gothic portals or windows. It may contain windows and oculi and be topped by pinnacles or cross, as is the case with this monument. Founded in the 11th century in Jerusalem, under the rule of St. Augustine and with the aim of gathering and assisting pilgrims, this order also began to perform military functions from 1136 onwards. Their mission was to defend the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and its custody, having built their first fortress in the town of Beit Jibrin. At that time they were already present in Portugal. After this monastery, they also received territories along the Sagres River, where they built Belver Castle, and later the town of Crato, where they founded a famous house that would give its name to their superiors from Afonso IV onwards, priors of Crato. Nearby is one of the most important examples of a fortified monastery in the Iberian Peninsula, founded by Álvaro Gonçalves Pereira, which would become in the second half of the 14th century the future headquarters of the Hospitaller Order in Portugal, the impressive monastery of Flor da Rosa. The side facades of the church feature mullioned windows with 3 centered arches which illuminate the naves, and each arm of the transept has a large mullioned window with a pointed arch. On the west side we can see the tripartite chevet of the temple, punctuated by voluminous Romanesque-looking buttresses, between which there are tall, mullioned windows with pointed arches. The buttress is a protruding structure that reinforces the outer wall of the church, helping to support the weight of the vault or roof. The mullion is a vertical bar of stone or wood that divides a window into sections, hence the concept of a mullioned window. It was widely used in Romanesque and Gothic windows. According to descriptions prior to 1844, the year in which the monastic buildings were demolished, the building extended southwards, where the cloister was located. The small doorway on the north side, in the transept arm, gave access to the old sacristy, since demolished, still showing traces of the base of a wall. Its fortress church configuration, which, like other contemporary temples, highlights the instability of the early centuries of Portuguese independence, is a compromise between functionality and religiosity. This is not surprising, since it was a monastery linked to a military and religious order. A balance materialized between the defensive tower, which could be the keep of a castle, and the large Gothic-style church. Inside, the church has a lowered floor, accessible via steps. It is divided into 3 naves, the central one being higher and wider. The walls are made of granite masonry. The naves, divided into 5 bays, have oak and chestnut wood beam ceilings and are separated by pointed arches resting on cruciform pillars with attached columns. The bays correspond to each section of a church nave, between 2 pillars or arches. They organize the space and are repeated throughout the building. The arcade arch is an arch that separates the central nave from the side naves. It runs parallel to the axis of the church and rests on pillars or columns. The pillars supporting the arcade arches of the church are generously decorated with plant motifs, more typical of the Gothic style, but also with various figurative representations. This Romanesque heritage expresses the importance of art as a narrative and even formative vehicle for believers within the religious space, combining biblical episodes with others of a popular nature. These extraordinary capitals depict episodes such as the temptation of Adam and Eve and the expulsion from paradise, alongside representations of fantastic beings that illustrate concepts such as sin and redemption. We can also see episodes from the life of Jesus Christ carved into the stone, such as the adoration of the Magi, the flagellation of the Lord, and the crucifixion. The history of this monastery records several important visits, such as that of Afonso Henriques, the first king of Portugal, who resided here for some time and heard impressive accounts of the Crusades. It was in this church that King Ferdinand I of Portugal married Leonor Teles in 1372, in a ceremony marked by the dramatic refusal of Prince Denis, son of Pedro I and Inês de Castro, to kiss the hand of Leonor Teles. In response, Ferdinand I raised a dagger with the intention of assassinating his brother, but was prevented from doing so by the intervention of 2 noblemen. Nuno Alves Pereira also rested here during a pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela. The church has 2 apses flanking the chancel, the one on the epistle side being preceded by a slender ogival arch supported by columns with decorated capitals. The interior has a polygonal floor plan with 5 sides, marked by the ribs of the vaulted ceiling, and is lit by 3 narrow openings on the right-hand side and in the center. The chancel is preceded by an ogival triumphal arch with decorated capitals, topped by an oculus. It is covered by a ribbed vault that converges on a central boss. The left wall of the chancel is almost entirely occupied by the tomb of Friar Estêvão Vasques, commander of Leça, who died in 1569. Built in the 16th century in Renaissance style, it has an arcosolium organized into pilasters and entablature. Under the arch is a bas-relief representing the coat of arms of the Cernache and Pinch. Above the tomb is a polychrome clay sculpture of the deceased, wearing the habit of the Hospitallers and depicted in a praying position before prie-dieu. On the right wall of the chancel there are two more twin arcosolia housing the tombs of Friar Lopo Pereira de Lima and Friar Diogo de Mel Pereira, who were brothers. An arcosolium is a tomb built into the wall topped by an arch. It is very common in medieval churches and monasteries for noble or religious burials. A pilaster is a vertical element protruding from a wall, similar to a column, which can be decorative or structural. The entablature is the horizontal assembly comprising an architrave, frieze, and cornice. Found above columns or pilasters, it is typical of classical and Renaissance architecture. Finally, the prie-dieu is a structure for prayer, with support for the knees and sometimes for the arms. It is used in devotional spaces and also appears, as here, represented in funerary sculptures. In the apse chapel on the Gospel side is the Chapel of Our Lady of the Rosary, which is preceded by a pointed arch. It is more commonly known as the Iron Chapel, possibly because there was once a metal gate protecting its interior. It is covered by a ribbed vault similar to the one in the chancel but on a smaller scale. 3 slits allow light to enter the interior. On the left wall of this chapel there is an arcosolium that houses the tomb of Friar João Coelho, carved in Ancien limestone in 1515 by the exceptional sculptor Diogo Pires o Moço. At the top there's a recumbent statue of the deceased, depicted as an elderly bearded man wearing a tunic with the cross of the Order of Malta on his chest. His head rests on a pillow and his hands are clasped in prayer. Below the recumbent statue is the sculptor's signature. On the front of the tomb chest is carved an angel holding a cartouche with a funerary inscription, flanked by the Coelho family coat of arms. On the right wall of the same chapel there is a bronze plate, consisting of 2 sheets containing a laudatory inscription in Latin with raised characters separated by 4 petaled rosettes. It was created in the 14th century to cover the ashes of Friar Estêvão Vasques Pimentel, founder of this monastery, who is buried in a shallow grave on the floor of this apse in accordance with his wishes. On the upper edge, angels flanking the Holy Trinity and the Annunciation are depicted. On the sides are 6 apostles, and on the lower edge is the heraldic shield with the national coat of arms and the cross of the Hospitallers. In the nave on the Gospel side, leaning against the north wall of the temple, is the tomb of Garcia Martins, who was prior of the Order of the Hospital, Grand Commander of the 5 Iberian Kingdoms and Commander of Leça. It was carved in granite in the first half of the 14th century and has a simple shape. This tomb, which is supported by 3 lions, has been placed in different locations within the church. The lid has a funerary inscription engraved in limestone, which mentions the date of Garcia Martins' death, January 1306, and the position he held. On the back wall, a large radiant rose window, similar in morphology to the Church of Santa Clara in Vila do Conde and the Church of São Francisco in Porto, illuminates the interior space. On the Gospel side, to the left of the entrance to the church, is a formidable baptismal font. It was carved in 1514 from Ançã limestone by the sculptor Diogo Pires o Moço. At the top is a carving of an angel lieutenant bearing the arms of Friar João Coelho, a figure similar to the one on his tomb by the same artist. The basin is octagonal in shape and is profusely and carefully decorated with plant motifs such as artichokes and flowers. There are also cartouches with epigraphic inscriptions in Gothic characters bearing the name of the commissioner of the work and his title as Superior of the Hospitaller Order, Prior of Crato. At the base are sculptures of 6 fantastic creatures, possibly dragons, which represent the forces of evil, subordinated by the angel and the artichokes, symbols of regeneration, which appear at the top. One of the most important functions of this monastery, deeply linked to the founding vocation of the Knights Hospitaller, was to assist pilgrims traveling towards Santiago de Compostela. The river Leça was crossed nearby via the Ponte da Pedra, stone bridge built in the 2nd century AD as part of the Roman road linking Portugal, Porto, to Braca Augusta, Braga. Thus, from the 10th century onwards, this monastery was a point of passage for pilgrims, including kings and nobles, but above all, thousands of strangers making the tough and dangerous journey to Compostela. With the extinction of the religious orders in Portugal in 1834, the monastery was abandoned and sold at public auction, falling into ruin. In the 1930s, it received major restoration work. The Monastery of Leça do Balio has been classified as a national monument since 1910 and is one of the most outstanding examples of Gothic architecture in Portugal. Thank you for discovering Portugal with us. If you liked the video, please click on the like button and subscribe to the channel to follow our new releases.